Thanks for joining us today. I'm recording this podcast in September, which is typically the time of year when church boards start thinking about budgets and pastors start thinking about potential salary increases. I talk about a lot of this in episode 11, so that's probably the place to go if that is specifically why you're listening today. And there's going to be a link in the show notes to direct you that way, and also resources that you can use regarding salary and those kind of housing issues. Today, instead, we're going to be talking about your future, specifically finances. But before we do, let me just share something of my background. In the 1990s, I was bi-vocationally working in the financial industry. And during that time, I became a registered investment advisor. Now, just about the time I became a registered investment advisor, they changed the order of that to investment advisor representative. I'm not sure why they did that. It doesn't sound quite as official. But what that meant is that I had a number of licenses that enabled me to help clients with mutual funds, buying stocks, developing their retirement, looking at their life insurance issues, anything that had to do with their financial future. And by the grace of God, I really helped a number of people become quite a bit more financially secure. I can't say that I did the same for myself, but that's another story. In any case, during those times, I learned quite a bit by listening and learning from some of the greats in the industry. Some of the things I learned were disappointing. I did see a number of people who were in the investment fields that were advising clients, and more often than not, they really didn't know much more than the people they were advising, even though they had all of those licenses. I worked for a firm for a brief period of time where almost all of the advisors were in the 6- and 7-figure category income-wise. But when the 1990s broke, and they did, I mean, in the early 1990s, people were getting 20-25% returns. By the end of 1990s, people were losing their shirts. And these advisors lost their money, a lot of their money as well. All the things that they were advising other people to do, they were crashing and burning. And it was not uncommon for me to go in the office, and of course they would read financial things like Barron's and different Wall Street papers. And then what they'd read in Barron's in the morning, they would advise clients in the afternoon. So more often than not, they were just a little more knowledgeable than their clients that they were advising, but really didn't have a specific plan in mind when they were sharing. I left that firm and I got involved in another firm that did much better work, quite frankly. But I learned some things in the process that I wanted to pass on to you, and I think might be helpful in terms of your investing. Perhaps you're not even investing at this time, and if you're not, well, that's going to be something for you to consider after we finish. The nature of the broker-dealer compliance dynamic is that in order to be a registered investment advisor, you have to be officially connected with a broker-dealer. There's a lot of licensing, there's bonding, there's fingerprints, there's all kinds of accountability issues. And you also have to be compliant, meaning that you are constantly attending classes and all that sort of thing. As a result, I am no longer a registered investment advisor, because I'm no longer connected to a broker-dealer. I'm no longer going to compliance meetings. When I decided to go back into full-time ministry, I lost all of those licenses. So I'm saying all that to say that nothing I'm going to say to you is meant to be the kind of advice that you absolutely 1,000% depend on. I am no longer someone who is qualified to give you investment advice. However, I can share with you from my personal experience some principles that I think will help you with regards to accumulating wealth towards the future. And I know that you're not in the ministry to accumulate wealth, but the unfortunate thing is that many pastors, particularly non-denominational pastors, reach their senior years and they have not planned for any kind of retirement. In fact, I wish there was somebody like me in my early years that had advised me, because I would be 1,000% better off than I am today. Starting early in this investment life is really critical. And something just as simple as $50 a month towards your retirement when you're 20 can make a world of difference. As an example, if someone who's 20 years old invests $2,000 into an IRA per year and does so from the time they're 20 till the time they're 30, and then stops, never puts another dollar into the market, versus someone who's 30 and puts $2,000 into the market every year until they're 65, guess who's going to have more money when they're 65? The person who only invested for 10 years. What's the difference? Time. Time is on your side if you use it properly. The longer you wait, the less time works with you. It's called the power of compound interest. And so if you are someone who has not started to put any kind of money towards your retirement, I would advise you to do that today. Now, again, another caveat. When you're talking about investing and we're talking about the market, I also need to let you know, not that I'm required to let you know anymore, but just the common sense is this. The stock market is gambling, pure and simple. And so you need to face that. When you're putting money into the market, you're gambling that the money you put in is going to be something that's going to be more when you take it out. And agreed with regards to the market, there are various ways that you can invest that are risky and less risky and moderately risky and all that sort of thing. But the market does not guarantee a return. There is no insurance that you're going to make money back from the market. So when you're talking about investing, we really are talking about a systemized gambling. That's what we're really talking about. So if you have a moral issue with that, then don't get involved in the market at all. There are other ways to invest, but they're all gambling. Even if you buy real estate, ultimately that is gambling. Anything that you put your money towards, even putting your money, ironically enough, in the bank to some degree is gambling. You're gambling that the FDIC is going to be solvent in order to guarantee your income. So anything you do investing-wise, there's a degree of risk involved. And so I want you to be able to, depending on where you are mentally and spiritually, I want you to understand that when you're getting involved in any kind of investing, there is gambling involved. And I hate to use that word, but it is what it is. There are also opportunities within the market. You don't have to invest in something that you're morally against. There are investment vehicles where you can make sure that the monies that you invest in the market do not go towards things like alcohol, tobacco, pornography, that sort of thing. You can invest in such a way so that your money is invested in things you care about. So there are socially responsible investment vehicles. But when we're talking about the market in general, I just want to say this, and this is one of the key reasons I wanted to talk with you about this today. I see this happen an awful lot, and people don't seem to get cured from it. But when we're talking about investing in the market, people are always looking for an edge. They're always looking for someone to advise them that's going to produce these phenomenal results for them. And I want to share with you that the best, absolute best over time form of investing, if you're going to get involved in investing in the market, the best form of investing is what is called DCA, dollar cost averaging. What is DCA? DCA is when you decide that you're going to put X amount of dollars, let's just say it's $100 a month, $100 a month into an IRA every month on the first of the month. That's dollar cost averaging. You're dollar cost averaging into the market every month, day after day, year after year, dollar cost averaging. So it's not dependent on whether the market's up. It's not dependent on whether the market's down. I often run into Christians, unfortunately, who are running after the latest trend. They're running after the latest advisor. This advisor for the last 5 years, 10 years has gotten amazing results. Well, guess what? Sooner or later, they don't. That's just a reality. If you look at history, sooner or later, they don't. There is no one, and I mean no one, who has consistently, from the time they started to the time they finished, always gotten perfect and great results. They will tell you about great results, but they will also leave out the parts where they didn't get great results. If you follow someone or follow any advice that is telling you they're going to get better results than anybody else, run for your life in the opposite direction. The facts of the matter are that if someone invests DCA, dollar cost averaging, X amount of dollars into the market every month consistently on the same day every month or week or however you do it consistently, history has proven that over time, depending on your risk tolerance, you're going to get a 5 or 8 or 11 or 15% return, depending on where your risk tolerance is. Consistently. That includes, if you look at the history of the stock market, that includes the crash of 1929, it includes all the down parts of the market, all the ups and everything else. It all averages out. At the end of the day, you're going to be infinitely better off if you're simply consistent. That's also true of life too, isn't it? You know, people in the Christian world that try to run after different ideas and run after different revivals, as it were, oftentimes become extremely disappointed because, you know, the ones who really succeed as Christians are those who are consistent in reading the scriptures, consistent in talking to the Lord on a daily basis, consistent in fellowship. That consistency produces results. It's exactly the same way when it comes to investing in the market. Speaking of investing in the market, where are you personally today? Are you in a place where you're putting money aside for the future? Because the future is going to come to you really quickly. I'm 65 years old. I'm already there. I didn't expect myself to get here this quick. And again, as I mentioned earlier, if I had someone who in my 20s had said to me, listen, here's what you need to do, put $50 away every month, I'd be a whole lot better off than I am today. And so wherever you are, age-wise, wherever you are, investing-wise, if you are under 70, no matter where you are, I would encourage you, if your risk tolerance is there, to begin to think about and then implement investing for your future. One of the easiest ways to begin is what's called a simple IRA. A church can set up a simple IRA, and one of the reasons that I recommend it, and again, I'm not an investment advisor anymore, this is just my personal advice. You can set up a simple IRA. One of the reasons it's really good to do for particularly a small church or a medium-sized church, is it's really easy to implement. It requires very little accounting requirements, different than a 401k or those kind of dynamics. It does the same thing as a 401k, but it doesn't have all of these other complicated things that you have to do. One of the easiest ways to set up an IRA, and again, the church can match, I think, up to 3% when it comes to an IRA, a simple IRA. So they can do a matching for a pastor. They can do a matching for people who are on staff. But it's very easy to implement, and it's in a way for the church and the person who's receiving those funds to take advantage of tax issues. You can put pre-tax money into a simple IRA. And so that helps you in your retirement plan. It helps the church as far as having to take care of the paperwork. So that's one of the things, a vehicle that's out there that you can set up. How would you set that up? You can get an investment advisor. That's one way to go. And there are actually even Christian companies that have investment advisors. You can Google those and look more into those at your convenience. You can even do that with a bank now. You can go to a bank and set up a simple IRA. What should you do with a simple IRA? How should you invest? Well, again, that's going to depend on your risk tolerance. They can advise you in a variety of different ways. Essentially, there are classes of funds that you can do. You can buy individual stocks. I would not recommend that. Again, depending on your risk tolerance and where you are in the investment dynamic. But when you invest in a stock, you are really in a risky situation. You're betting that that one company is going to rise in value. And if they tank, then your money goes with them. A mutual fund is not a safe investment, but is a safer investment, because with a mutual fund, you're going to invest in perhaps 10 companies or more at the same time. So if one of those companies tanks, the person who's managing that mutual fund can make the decision, we're going to get rid of that stock. We're going to get rid of that company and replace it with another. So with a mutual fund, whether you realize it or not, you're paying a small fee inside that mutual fund that you basically never see. But the person who is managing that fund is there to make sure that all of those funds are producing a result. I would encourage you, especially as a pastor and someone who's not really savvy with investments, I think mutual funds are the best way to go. With mutual funds, you can, again, be in a place where you're conservative, you can be moderate, you can be aggressive. I would be more aggressive if I was in my early 20s. I would be moderate if I'm in my 40s and 50s, and I'd be obviously conservative in my 60s. That's a general rule of thumb. But that's something you can talk to your advisor about, whether it's the bank or anybody else. But you can talk to them about those kind of things. But I would diversify, even in those investments. Perhaps 25% in a small cap fund, 25% in a large cap fund, 25% in an index fund. They'll show you the different kinds of funds and the investment strategies behind them. But diversify, and don't be looking for that IRA to go skyrocketing through the roof. But as I mentioned earlier, dollar cost average, a certain amount of money into that every single month, and forget about it. It just should be part of your normal expenses. And of course, you can write that off in terms of taxes, so it's also helpful there. But these are just some ideas that I wanted to share with you today, because ultimately I want to help you to have a more fruitful retirement. It's sad when you've seen someone who just doesn't plan or didn't get the opportunity to plan, and then they are essentially stuck if they're unfortunately disabled or something happens to them where they no longer can minister. Is it really fair for that church to continue to pay them a full-time salary while a new pastor is taking over responsibilities? Especially with non-denominational churches, that can be really a challenge. So today, whatever that day is for you, whatever age you are, I want to encourage you to begin to invest towards your future. I want to quickly mention, and I did mention this earlier, but while I was in the investment field, and the reason that I'm big on this DCA concept is there was, and there actually is still a man, his name is Nick Murray, he's still alive, but I had the opportunity to see him at a dinner for the investment advisors that I was associated with at the time. And he said something that really impacted me. He said, when you see these people, and he was in the industry, and he has been in the industry all of his life, he's seen the trends, the up and downs, the people who said they got the latest trend, the latest this, the latest that. He said, anyone who tells you that they can predict the market is no different than someone who looks at two streams of water coming down a window pane and bets on which one's going to hit the bottom first. And when he said that, that really impacted me, because there's no way to predict. One of those water streams can be looking like it's going to go as fast as possible down to the bottom and then stop. The other one can reach the bottom first. There's no possible way to predict it. And that should be, I think, everybody's philosophy. Yes, there are people that get trends. There are going to be flukes where people make a ton of money in the market and they say, the reason I made it is because Jim Cramer told me to invest in this and I invested in it and now I'm a millionaire. There are going to be those people, along with the majority of people who also listen to Jim Cramer, invested in a certain stock and lost everything. It's just the nature of that beast. And if you run after that, you're always going to be aggravated. You're always going to be on edge. The thing to do is put together a balanced portfolio that matches your investment risk. And again, talk to an investment advisor about that. But dollar cost averaging, X amount of dollars into the market, into that investment every single month, year after year, after year, after year. That is going to produce the best result for you. Now, this doesn't seem like something that is appropriate for Minister's Toolbox because we're talking about money, but you know what? You've got to deal with money. You've got to think about what is coming in the future for you. And if the Lord returns, it'll all be solved. You don't have to worry about it. But what if you're 75 and 80? Are you going to keep ministering because you've got to minister in order to keep the money coming in? Or will you have alternatives? This is the time to think about it and plan for the future. Do the best you can to plan for the future. Once again, sometimes it's impossible to do so, and I get that. Believe me, I've been there. I'm a church planter. I understand what it's like to live on, SpaghettiOs. I get that. But now is the time to put some money aside for the future. Put some investment aside for the future. And if you do, it'll help you. If you don't, well, you'll be stuck with whatever comes your way. As you know, I end each podcast with a quote, especially for you. This one is from Warren Buffett, who said, If you don't find a way to make money while you sleep, you will work until you die. Not exactly the most inspiring word you've ever heard, but something to consider. Until next time.
For more resources, go to ministerstoolbox.com. Thanks for listening.